You have tried to change before, maybe dozens of times. You set the alarm earlier, you bought the running shoes, you downloaded the app, started the journal, made the promise, and for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, it worked. You felt the momentum. You believed this time would be different, then something happened, a stressful week at work, a sick child, an unexpected bill, a bad night of sleep. And just like that, the habit slipped. One missed day became two, two became a week. And before long, you were back where you started, wondering what went wrong. This audiobook is brought to you by Elite Mind Audiobooks, where the mission is simple: turn every minute into mastery. And today, that mastery begins with something that affects every area of your life: your habits. What you are about to hear is not another collection of motivational slogans or impossible morning routines designed for people with no responsibilities. This is a realistic, science-based guide to building habits that actually stick, even when life is messy, unpredictable, and exhausting. By the time you finish listening, you will understand exactly why your past attempts failed and precisely what to do differently this time. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Before we can build habits that last, we need to understand why so many habit attempts fail. And the answer is probably not what you think. Most people believe they fail at habits because of a lack of willpower. They think they are weak, lazy, or somehow deficient in self-discipline. They compare themselves to people who seem to have it all together and conclude that successful people simply have more motivation or mental strength. This belief is not only wrong, it is actively harmful. It keeps you trapped in a cycle of trying, failing, and blaming yourself. It prevents you from seeing the real causes of habit failure and the real solutions. Here is the truth: willpower is vastly overrated. Research in psychology and behavioral science has consistently shown that willpower is a limited resource. It depletes throughout the day. It weakens under stress. It fails precisely when you need it most. Relying on willpower to sustain habits is like relying on a phone battery that is always at 10%. It might work occasionally, but it will fail you when it matters. The people who seem to have effortless discipline are not operating on superior willpower. They have built systems that reduce the need for willpower. They have designed their environments, routines, and identities in ways that make good habits easier and bad habits harder. They are not stronger than you. They are smarter about how they approach change. The second reason habits fail is that people start too big. There is something deeply appealing about dramatic transformation. We want to go from zero to hero overnight. We commit to running 5 miles every morning, meditating for an hour, completely overhauling our diet, and waking up at 5 in the morning, all starting Monday. This approach feels ambitious and exciting. It also almost always fails. When you demand too much change too quickly, you exhaust your capacity for adaptation. You create a gap between your current self and your target behavior that is simply too large to bridge sustainably. The initial enthusiasm fades, the difficulty remains, and eventually you quit. The third reason is that most habit strategies ignore identity. They focus on what you want to achieve rather than who you want to become. You set a goal to lose 30 pounds, but you still see yourself as someone who struggles with weight. You decide to write every day, but deep down you do not believe you are a writer. This mismatch between behavior and identity creates constant friction. You are trying to act in ways that contradict your self-image, and eventually your self-image wins. The fourth reason is that people do not plan for disruption. They build habits for ideal conditions: the perfect morning when nothing goes wrong, the peaceful evening with no interruptions, the calm week with no crises. But life is not ideal conditions. Life is sick kids, demanding bosses, broken cars, family emergencies, and unexpected chaos. Habits built only for perfect days collapse the moment reality intrudes. Understanding these 4 failure modes, over-reliance on willpower, starting too big, ignoring identity, and failing to plan for disruption is essential. They explain why your past attempts did not work, and they point toward what you need to do differently. The coming chapters will address each of these problems directly. You will learn to build habits that do not depend on willpower, that start small enough to survive, that reshape your identity from the inside out, and that persist through the chaos of real life. The message of this chapter is this: you have not failed because something is wrong with you. You have failed because you were using the wrong approach. The right approach exists, and you are about to learn it. Chapter 2. To build better habits, you need to understand how habits actually form in the brain. This is not abstract science for its own sake. It is practical knowledge that changes how you approach behavior change. A habit is, at its core, a behavior that has become automatic through repetition. When you first learn to drive, every action requires conscious attention. Check the mirrors. Adjust the seat, turn the key, release the parking brake. Over time, these actions become automatic. You no longer think about them. They happen without effort. The same process applies to every habit, good or bad. Brushing your teeth, checking your phone, reaching for a snack when stressed, going for a run after work. Each of these is a behavior that was once conscious and is now automatic. Neuroscience has identified a specific structure in the brain called the basal ganglia that plays a central role in habit formation. When a behavior is new, it requires significant activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for conscious decision-making. This is effortful and draining, but as the behavior is repeated, control gradually shifts to the basal ganglia. The behavior becomes encoded as a pattern. It requires less conscious attention. It becomes a habit. This shift from conscious effort to automatic pattern is called automaticity, and automaticity is the goal of habit formation. When a behavior becomes truly automatic, it no longer drains your willpower. It happens with minimal effort. This is why established habits feel easy while new habits feel hard. Researchers have identified a simple loop that underlies every habit. It consists of 3 components. First, there is a cue, something that triggers the behavior. It might be a time of day, a location, an emotional state, or an action that precedes it. Second, there is the routine, the behavior itself. Third, there is a reward, something that reinforces the behavior and makes it more likely to recur. Understanding this loop gives you power over your habits. If you want to build a new habit, you need to establish a clear cue, define the routine precisely, and ensure there is a reward that reinforces it. If you want to break a bad habit, you can disrupt the loop by changing the cue, substituting a different routine, or removing the reward. Consider a simple example. Many people have a habit of checking their phone first thing in the morning. The cue is waking up. The routine is reaching for the phone. The reward is the little dopamine hit from notifications, messages, and new information. This loop is powerful because the cue is unavoidable and the reward is immediate and reliable. If you wanted to replace this habit with something more constructive, you would work with the same loop. Keep the cue of waking up. Define a new routine, perhaps 5 minutes of stretching or writing in a journal, and create a reward, maybe a feeling of accomplishment or a favorite cup of coffee that you only drink after completing the new routine. There is one more scientific principle that matters enormously for habit formation. It is called the habit formation period. Research suggests that it takes, on average, about 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic, though this varies depending on the complexity of the behavior and the individual. This means that the first 2 months of a new habit require the most effort. You are in the building phase. After that, the habit begins to sustain itself. This has practical implications. When you start a new habit, do not expect it to feel easy right away. Expect the first 60 days or so to require conscious effort. Plan for this. Protect this period. Know that if you can make it through the building phase, the behavior will become significantly easier to maintain. As you move through your week, pay attention to the habit loops in your own life. Notice what cues trigger your behaviors, both good and bad. Notice what rewards reinforce them. This awareness is the foundation of deliberate habit change. The message of this chapter is simple but important. Habits are not random. They follow predictable patterns in the brain. Understanding these patterns allows you to work with your neurology rather than against it. Chapter 3. There is a level of habit change that goes deeper than techniques and tactics. It is the level of identity. And if you want habits that truly last, this is where you must focus your attention. Most people approach habits from the outside in. They start with outcomes. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to save $10,000. I want to run a marathon. Then they work backward to the behaviors that might produce those outcomes. This approach is intuitive, but it has a fundamental weakness. When you focus only on outcomes, you are essentially trying to force behaviors that conflict with your current identity. You see yourself as someone who is overweight, bad with money, or not athletic. You are trying to act against that self-image through sheer effort, and eventually, the self-image wins. You revert to the behaviors that match who you believe you are. The more powerful approach is identity-based habit change. Instead of starting with what you want to achieve, you start with who you want to become. Not I want to run a marathon, but I am a runner. Not I want to save money, but I am financially responsible. Not I want to lose weight, but I am a healthy person. This shift might seem like mere semantics, but it changes everything. When you adopt a new identity, behaviors naturally flow from it. A runner runs. A financially responsible person saves. A healthy person makes choices that support their health. You are no longer forcing behaviors against your self-image. You are expressing behaviors that align with it. How do you change your identity? The same way you change anything, through repeated action and evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you go for a run, you cast a vote for being a runner. When you write a page, you cast a vote for being a writer. When you choose the salad instead of the fries, you cast a vote for being a healthy person. No single vote is decisive, but over time the votes accumulate. They build evidence, and that evidence reshapes your self-image. This is why small actions matter so much. You might think that running 1 mile is trivial. It will not transform your body or your life, but it does something more important. It casts a vote for your new identity. It provides evidence that you are the type of person who runs. Each repetition strengthens that identity until eventually it becomes who you are. There is a powerful exercise you can do right now. Think about the habits you want to build. Then ask yourself, what type of person would have these habits naturally? If you want to exercise regularly, the answer might be an athlete or simply a healthy person. If you want to read more, the answer might be a learner or an intellectual. If you want to manage money better, the answer might be a saver or someone who is financially free. Once you have identified the type of person, hold that identity in your mind. Begin to see yourself as that person, even before the evidence fully supports it. Then focus on casting small votes every day that provide evidence for the identity. Not massive, unsustainable efforts, but small, consistent actions that reinforce who you are becoming. This approach also helps when you face temptation or difficulty. Instead of asking, "Can I resist this?" ask, "What would the person I am becoming do in this situation?" A runner does not debate whether to run today. Running is just what runners do. A healthy person does not agonize over every food choice. Healthy choices are just what healthy people make. When your identity is clear, decisions become simpler. Be patient with this process. Identity does not change overnight, but it does change vote by vote, action by action, day by day. And once it changes, habits become almost effortless. They are no longer something you have to do. They are simply an expression of who you are. The message of this chapter is fundamental. True habit change is identity change. Focus not on what you want to do, but on who you want to become. Chapter 4. One of the most counterintuitive principles of habit formation is this. When it comes to starting, smaller is better. Much smaller than you probably think. When people commit to new habits, they almost always start too big. They decide to meditate for 30 minutes a day when they have never meditated at all. They commit to going to the gym 5 times a week when they have been sedentary for years. They resolve to write 1,000 words every morning when they have not written anything in months. This approach feels right because it seems ambitious. It matches the scale of the change we want to see, but it ignores a crucial reality. The biggest barrier to any habit is simply starting. Once you are at the gym, you will probably work out. Once you are sitting in meditation, you will probably stay for a while. Once you have written the first sentence, more will follow. The challenge is getting started in the first place. When you set a large target, you increase the resistance to starting. 30 minutes of meditation feels like a significant commitment. It is easy to put off. It is easy to skip when you are tired or busy. The same is true for an hour at the gym or 1,000 words of writing. But what if the target were so small that it required almost no effort to begin? What if the commitment were 2 minutes of meditation, 5 push-ups, or 1 sentence of writing? These targets are so trivially easy that resistance almost disappears. There is no excuse not to do them. And that is precisely the point. The goal in the early stages of habit formation is not to achieve impressive outcomes. It is to build consistency. It is to establish the behavior as a regular part of your life. It is to show up again and again until showing up becomes automatic. Consider this. A person who meditates for 2 minutes every day for a year has built something far more valuable than a person who meditates for 30 minutes occasionally. The first person has established a habit. Meditation is now part of their identity and routine. Expanding the duration is easy from this foundation. The second person has not established anything. Each meditation session is a separate act of willpower. This principle is sometimes called the 2-minute rule. When starting a new habit, scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes or less. Instead of running 3 miles, put on your running shoes and step outside. Instead of reading 30 minutes, read 1 page. Instead of writing an essay, write 1 sentence. Instead of a full workout, do 1 set of 1 exercise. This feels almost ridiculous at first. Surely 1 page of reading will not transform you into a reader. 1 push-up will not build strength. 1 sentence will not make you a writer. And in immediate terms, that is correct. But you are not trying to get fit, educated, or productive in a single session. You are trying to build the habit of showing up. You are casting votes for your new identity. You are reducing the behavior to its smallest possible form so that consistency becomes achievable. Once the habit is established, once it feels automatic to show up, you can gradually expand. The 2-minute meditation becomes 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. The 1 page of reading becomes a chapter. The single push-up becomes a workout. But this expansion happens only after the foundation of consistency is solid. There is a related principle that reinforces this approach. Never miss twice. Even with the best intentions, you will occasionally miss a day. Life happens. Perfect consistency is not realistic, but the difference between missing once and missing twice is enormous. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. If you miss a day, make it your absolute priority to show up the next day, even if it is just for the minimum 2-minute version. As you think about the habits you want to build, ask yourself what the 2-minute version would look like. What is the smallest possible action that represents showing up? Start there. Protect consistency above all else. and trust that expansion will come naturally once the habit takes root. The message of this chapter is simple. Start so small that failure is almost impossible. Build consistency first. Expand later. Chapter 5. You are not operating in a vacuum. Every behavior you take or fail to take is influenced by your environment. The spaces you inhabit, the objects within reach, the people around you, all of these shape your choices in ways you may not consciously recognize. The science is clear on this point. Environment is one of the most powerful determinants of behavior. Studies have shown that people eat more when food is visible and within reach. They exercise more when they live closer to parks and gyms. They smoke more when they spend time with smokers. They spend more when they shop in stores designed to encourage purchases. This is not a weakness. It is simply how human beings work. We are profoundly influenced by our surroundings, and this influence can be a liability or an asset depending on how you design your environment. The principle is straightforward. Make good habits easy and visible. Make bad habits hard and invisible. This seems almost too obvious, yet most people never deliberately apply it. Let us start with making good habits easy. Every habit has friction associated with it, the steps required to perform the behavior. The more friction, the less likely you are to follow through. Reducing friction increases the odds of action. If you want to eat healthier, keep healthy food visible and accessible. Put the fruit bowl on the counter. Prepare vegetables in advance so they are ready when you need a snack. Keep unhealthy food out of the house entirely, or at least hidden in inconvenient locations. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Better yet, sleep in your workout clothes. Remove every possible step between waking up and starting your exercise. If you want to read more, keep a book on your nightstand, on your coffee table, in your bag. Make books the default thing within reach when you have a free moment. If you want to practice a skill, keep the materials visible and accessible. A guitar on a stand in the living room gets played far more than a guitar in a case in the closet. Now consider making bad habits hard. Just as reducing friction promotes good behavior, increasing friction discourages bad behavior. If you want to watch less television, unplug the TV after each use. The small inconvenience of plugging it back in creates a moment of pause. If you want to reduce social media use, delete the apps from your phone and only access them through a web browser. If you want to stop snacking mindlessly, do not keep snacks in the house. Each added step reduces the likelihood of the behavior. And unlike willpower, environmental changes do not deplete. They work automatically, every time, without requiring conscious effort. There is also the matter of social environment. The people you spend time with have an enormous influence on your habits. If your friends eat healthy and exercise regularly, you are more likely to do the same. If your colleagues drink heavily and never read, you will absorb those patterns. We tend to adopt the habits of the people around us, often without realizing it. This does not mean you need to abandon your current relationships, but it does mean you should be intentional about your social environment. Seek out people who have the habits you want to build. Join groups, communities, or classes where those habits are the norm. Find an accountability partner who shares your goals. The more you surround yourself with people who embody your desired identity, the easier it becomes to embody it yourself. Consider your current environment, both physical and social. Ask yourself what cues in your environment trigger your bad habits and what changes would make those cues less visible. Ask yourself what friction stands between you and your good habits and what changes would reduce that friction. Even small adjustments can produce significant results. The message of this chapter is practical. Stop relying on willpower to overcome a badly designed environment. Instead, design an environment that makes good habits the path of least resistance. Chapter 6. There is a technique for building habits that is simple, elegant, and remarkably effective. It is called habit stacking, and once you understand it, you will wonder why you never used it before. The principle is this: link a new habit to an existing habit. Use the behavior you already do automatically as a trigger for the behavior you want to establish. Recall the habit loop from an earlier chapter. Every habit has a cue that triggers it. The challenge with new habits is that they lack an established cue. You intend to meditate or journal or stretch, but there is no automatic trigger that prompts the behavior. You have to remember to do it, and memory is unreliable. Habit stacking solves this problem by borrowing the cue from an existing habit. The formula is simple. After I do current habit, I will do new habit. The current habit becomes the trigger for the new one. Here are some examples. After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 2 minutes. After I sit down at my desk at work, I will write my 3 priorities for the day. After I finish dinner, I will take a 10-minute walk. After I get into bed, I will read 1 page of a book. After I brush my teeth at night, I will write 1 sentence of gratitude. The power of this approach is that you are anchoring the new behavior to something that is already wired into your routine. You do not have to remember to meditate. You only have to remember that meditation follows coffee, and since coffee is already automatic, the new habit inherits some of that automaticity. For habit stacking to work, you need to choose your anchor habits carefully. The anchor should be something you do every day without fail, at roughly the same time and in the same context. It should also be compatible with the new habit in terms of location and energy level. Stacking a high-energy habit like exercise onto a low-energy anchor like getting into bed does not make sense. You can also create chains of stacked habits. After I wake up, I will drink a glass of water. After I drink water, I will do 5 minutes of stretching. After I stretch, I will meditate for 2 minutes. After I meditate, I will write my priorities for the day. Each habit triggers the next, creating a morning routine that runs almost automatically. This chaining effect is powerful because it reduces the number of decisions you need to make. You do not decide separately whether to drink water, stretch, meditate, and plan. You decide only to start the chain. Everything else follows. There is a related technique that involves implementation intentions. Research has shown that people who specify exactly when and where they will perform a behavior are significantly more likely to follow through. Instead of vaguely intending to exercise more, you commit that you will exercise at 7 in the morning in your living room. This specificity removes ambiguity and creates a mental connection between the context and the behavior. Combining implementation intentions with habit stacking is especially effective. You are specifying not only when and where, but also what will trigger the behavior. This level of clarity dramatically increases your odds of consistency. As you plan your habits, identify the anchor habits you could use. Map out your daily routine and find the natural moments where a new habit could attach. Create your stacking statements in the format of "after I do this, I will do that." Write them down. Review them until they become automatic. The message of this chapter is practical. Do not rely on vague intentions. Attach new habits to existing ones through habit stacking. Create clear, specific triggers that make showing up almost inevitable. Chapter 7. Here is where most habit advice falls apart. It works beautifully under ideal conditions, and then real life happens. The meeting runs late. The child gets sick. The project deadline moves up. The car breaks down. Sleep is terrible. Stress is high. And suddenly all those carefully planned habits seem impossible. If your habit system only works when life is perfect, it is not really a system at all. It is a fantasy. Real habit mastery means building behaviors that survive disruption. The first key is accepting that disruption is normal, not exceptional. Many people treat disruptions as temporary obstacles after which things will return to normal. They are always waiting for the right time to focus on habits, the time when work calms down, when the kids are older, when they move to a new house, when something finally settles. That time never comes. Life is inherently variable. There will always be stress, demands, and unexpected challenges. The person who waits for perfect conditions waits forever. The person who builds habits that accommodate imperfect conditions actually builds habits. The second key is having a reduced version of every important habit. This is where the 2-minute rule from an earlier chapter becomes crucial. Your default habit might be 30 minutes of exercise, but what is your minimum viable habit when everything goes wrong? Perhaps it is 5 minutes of movement. Perhaps it is 10 push-ups. Perhaps it is simply putting on your workout clothes and stretching. Having this minimum version defined in advance is critical. When chaos strikes, you do not have to figure out what to do. You already know. You drop to your minimum and maintain the streak. The goal is to never fully stop. Even a tiny action keeps the habit alive. The third key is building flexibility into your triggers. If your habit is anchored to a specific time and that time becomes unavailable, what happens? The rigid planner has no backup. The flexible planner has alternative triggers ready. I usually exercise at 6 in the morning, but if that is not possible, I will exercise at lunch or immediately after work. I usually meditate after coffee, but if my morning is disrupted, I will meditate during my lunch break. This does not mean being vague. You still have default times and triggers, but you also have backup plans for when the default is impossible. This flexibility prevents a single disruption from derailing the entire habit. The fourth key is managing your expectations during difficult periods. There will be seasons of life when maintaining your habits at full intensity is genuinely impossible. A new baby, a health crisis, an overwhelming project at work. During these times, the goal shifts from growth to maintenance. You are not trying to expand your habits or achieve peak performance. You are simply trying to keep the behaviors alive until conditions improve. This is not failure. This is wisdom. The person who insists on full intensity during a crisis often burns out or quits entirely. The person who gracefully reduces intensity preserves the habit for the long term. They understand that a habit maintained at low levels during hard times can quickly return to full strength when conditions allow. The fifth key is learning from disruptions. Every time your habits are tested by life circumstances, you gain information. What triggered the disruption? How did you respond? What worked and what did not? What could you do differently next time? This reflective approach turns setbacks into lessons. Over time, your habits become more robust because they have been tested and refined by real challenges. Ask yourself how your current habits would survive a difficult week. What would happen if you got sick, had a family emergency, or faced a crisis at work? If the honest answer is that your habits would collapse, then you need to build in more resilience. Define your minimum versions. Create backup triggers. Accept that imperfect consistency is infinitely better than perfect inconsistency. The message of this chapter is realistic. Life will disrupt your habits. Plan for it. Build systems that bend without breaking. Chapter 8. There is a force in habit formation that most people dramatically underestimate. It is the power of time. Small habits, repeated consistently over months and years, produce results that seem almost magical when viewed from the outside. This is the compound effect. Just as money invested wisely grows exponentially over decades, habits practiced consistently accumulate into transformational outcomes. And just as most people underestimate compound interest, most people underestimate the compound effect of daily behaviors. Consider what happens if you read just 20 pages a day. That is perhaps 30 minutes of reading, easily achievable for most people. Over a year, that amounts to over 7,000 pages, or roughly 20 to 30 books depending on length. Over a decade, you will have read hundreds of books. You will have absorbed ideas, perspectives, and knowledge that fundamentally change how you think. 20 pages does not feel significant on any given day, but the cumulative effect is life-changing. The same principle applies to exercise, writing, learning a skill, saving money, or building relationships. Tiny daily investments, invisible in the short term, become massive over time. This is both inspiring and frustrating. Inspiring because it means extraordinary results are available to anyone willing to be consistent. Frustrating because the results are delayed, often for months or years. This delay is where most people give up. They start a new habit, stick with it for a few weeks, and see little visible change. They expected quick results. They feel like the effort is not paying off. They conclude the habit is not working and abandon it. What they do not realize is that they were on the verge of the breakthrough. The compound effect works on a curve. Progress is slow and invisible at first, then suddenly accelerates. Think of it like heating water. You apply heat steadily, and for a long time nothing visible happens. The water is getting warmer, but it looks the same. Then, at a certain point, it boils. The visible change happens suddenly, but it was made possible by all the invisible progress that came before. Habits work the same way. The external results often appear suddenly, but they are the product of steady, invisible internal change. Understanding this changes how you approach habits. You stop expecting immediate payoffs. You stop judging your habits by short-term results. You commit to the process and trust that the outcomes will come. There is a practical technique that helps with this. Instead of focusing on outcomes, focus on repetitions. Count the number of days you have maintained the habit. Mark them on a calendar. Watch the chain grow. Your job is not to achieve specific results right now. Your job is to not break the chain. The results will take care of themselves over time. Another helpful technique is to visualize your future self. Where will you be in 5 years if you maintain your current habits? Where will you be if you adopt the habits you are trying to build? Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a month and underestimate what they can accomplish in a year or a decade. Let the vision of your future self motivate present action. Be patient with the process. The compound effect rewards the consistent over the intense. The person who exercises moderately every day for 10 years will be far healthier than the person who trains intensely for 3 months and then stops. The person who saves a little every month for decades will be wealthier than the person who saves aggressively for a year and then splurges. Consistency over time is the key. As you think about your habits, ask yourself what they will produce if you maintain them for the next year, the next 5 years, the next decade. Let that long-term vision inform your daily choices. Remember that every time you show up, you are making a deposit. The interest is compounding. And one day you will look back and be amazed at how far you have come. The message of this chapter is patience. Trust the compound effect. Show up consistently, and let time do its work. Chapter 9. You now have a comprehensive understanding of how habits really work. You know why your past attempts failed. You understand the science of habit formation. You have learned to focus on identity rather than outcomes. You know the power of starting small, designing your environment, stacking habits, surviving disruption, and trusting the compound effect. The question that remains is how you will take this knowledge and turn it into a living system for change. Knowledge without application is entertainment. It might be interesting, but it changes nothing. The difference between the person who listens to this audiobook and moves on and the person who transforms their life comes down to one thing: action. Let us build your habit system step by step. First, choose 1 or 2 habits to focus on. Not 5, not 10, 1 or 2. The most common mistake is trying to change too much at once. Your capacity for change is limited. Spreading it across many habits ensures that none of them take root. Concentrated focus on one or two habits gives you the best chance of success. Once those are solid, you can add more. Choose habits that matter. Ask yourself which single habit, if you built it successfully, would have the greatest positive impact on your life right now. Maybe it is exercise. Maybe it is reading. Maybe it is managing your finances. Maybe it is connecting with your spouse. There are many good habits, but some are more important than others given your current circumstances. Start there. Second, define your identity. Who is the type of person who naturally has this habit? If the habit is exercise, you might identify as an athlete, a fit person, or simply someone who takes care of their body. If the habit is reading, you might identify as a learner, a reader, or an intellectual. Write this identity down. Remind yourself of it regularly. Begin to see yourself as this person, even before the evidence fully supports it. Third, define your minimum viable habit. Scale the behavior down to something so small that it is almost impossible to fail. 2 minutes of movement, 1 page of reading, 1 sentence of journaling, 1 minute of meditation. This is not your eventual goal, it is your starting point. It is what you commit to on the hardest days. Protect this minimum above all else. Fourth, create your habit stack. Identify an existing habit that will serve as your trigger. Formulate your stacking statement. After I do existing habit, I will do new habit. Make it specific. Write it down. Rehearse it mentally until the connection feels natural. Fifth, design your environment. What changes to your physical space would make the habit easier? What cues can you make more visible? What friction can you remove? Make these changes now, not later. Your environment will either support your habits or undermine them. Take control of it. Sixth, plan for disruption. What is your backup trigger if your primary trigger is unavailable? What is the minimum version you will maintain during difficult periods? Write these contingency plans down. Knowing them in advance prevents the scrambling that leads to broken habits. Seventh, track your progress. Use a simple system. A calendar where you mark each day. An app that records your streak. A journal where you note your consistency. The act of tracking reinforces the habit and provides motivation to maintain the chain. Eighth, find accountability. Tell someone about your habit. Find a partner with similar goals. Join a community where the habit is normalized. External accountability increases follow-through dramatically. These 8 steps constitute your habit system. Follow them for each new habit you want to build. Return to them whenever you feel yourself drifting. They are your blueprint for lasting change. As you return to the demands of your daily life, remember that transformation is not about dramatic gestures. It is about small actions, repeated consistently over time. Every day offers opportunities to cast votes for the person you are becoming. Every choice matters. Every repetition counts. The habits you build will shape your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your peace of mind. They will determine more than any single decision the trajectory of your life. This is not a small thing. This is perhaps the most important work you can do. Start today. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. You now have the solution. Go put it to work.